Hello, you're tuned into a special discussion on The Wire. On the 24th of March, India was put under lockdown to curb the spread of an infectious disease. Over 100 crore people directly got impacted by the move. All construction work got shut down, labor couldn't operate, and the small and medium enterprise businesses were stopped dead. With economic activity halting at such a large scale, the incomes of people outside the formal sector were bound to get affected. 2 days after the announcement of the lockdown, Finance Minister Nirmala Sithararam made an announcement for the poorest of the poor in the country. She said that 800 million beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act would receive 5 kilograms of grain in addition to the usual allocation of 5 kgs per person. This, she said, will be provided by the government free of charge in the next 3 months. That is April, May and June. Following the announcement, well-known and award-winning economists like Raghuram Rajan, Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee said that Finance Minister's announcement is a welcome move, but 5 kg extra ration for 3 months won't be enough. We are now just 1 month away from June, and to understand how real is the problem of starvation in India amid the ongoing pandemic, I am joined by Kabir Agarwal, who is a correspondent with The Wire and has been closely covering food security and ration dispersal in the country since the pandemic hit us. Thanks, Kabir, for your time. My first question to you is this, that for the uninitiated, I want you to explain who are the poorest of the poor in our country? How does the government know who is starving? And are these lists accurate?
Well, so to begin with, before COVID, so hunger has been a problem in India even before the lockdown. So we have something called the National Food Security Act of 2013, which ensures that nobody in the country, the idea of which is to ensure that nobody in the country goes hungry. So it's based on that act that around 800 million people have ration cards, have access to food grain through ration cards. And so not so much as who is to be included in the under the National Food Security Act. The act was imagined to exclude those who do not need ration. So there are certain exclusion criteria in the act, like for instance, for urban areas, there are many criteria. One of which is that if a household possesses a four-wheeler, an AC, a computer, or a laptop, or a refrigerator. In rural areas, if there are 3 or more rooms, with all rooms having pakka walls, and if there is any member of the family earning more than 10,000 per month. So these are some of the exclusion criteria under the National Food Security Act. So these people would not get the benefit of the National Food Security Act. But still, so the Act determines that about 67% of India, 75% in rural India, and 50% in urban India are covered by the Act. And this percentage goes on changing from state to state depending on the deprivation in the state. So, for example, for a richer state like Kerala, this percentage is closer to 50%. And for a poorer state like Jharkhand, this is around 90%. Around 90% people in Jharkhand covered by the National Food Security Act.
Okay.
But beyond that, everybody else is excluded from. So people who are covered by the National Food Security Act get access to food grain and cooking oil and sugar through the public distribution system, through a fair price shop, where they get some people who are below the poverty line, who are the most deprived, get access to food grain free of cost. Some people get it at subsidized rates. So that is how the National Food Security Act works.
And when the finance minister said on the 24th of March that so the poorest of the poor people will get additional 5 kg wheat or rice. So it was this percentage of people who are categorized under the National Food Security Act.
Correct. So this would be 67% of the population. She also mentioned the figure 80 crore people would get this benefit. So there are around 20 crore ration cards in India, and about 80.5 crore beneficiaries, individual beneficiaries. So when the government announced that the additional food grain of 5 kilograms will go to these 80 crore people, that is what she meant.
And so you said that there are 20 crore ration card holders and 80 crore individual beneficiaries of PDS.
Yeah, there are 20 crore ration cards. So each ration card, on an average, according to this database, has 4 people per household. So one household will have
Okay.
one ration card.
Okay.
Uh, the average size of household in India is slightly more. If you look at the census, around 5. But some academics have said that poorer households have tend to have smaller families. So perhaps that is why it doesn't reflect the average size of household according to the census.
Okay. So, what do we know about people who don't have bank accounts for direct benefit transfers and people who don't have ration cards? Where do they fall in the purview of this ration dispersal scheme?
Yeah, so like our population, according to the census, is around 1.3 billion. And according to the census of 2011, which is almost 10 years old, and our population since then is estimated to have grown by 150 million. So academics like John Reyes, Neha Mungikar, and Kritika Khera have done this calculation that just based on the increase in population that we've seen in the last 9 years, which is 150 million, 108 million people more people should have been included in under the PDS, under the National Food Security Act, and these people are excluded because the number of people who are covered by the National Food Security Act is based on a calculation done on the 2011 population. So just because we have more people now than we did in 2011, all those people are left out just on that basis. So that calculation is around 108 million people who are left out just for that reason. And the government has recognized this belatedly. So, for example, the effect of this is that once people are left out, once people do not have ration cards and they want to access PDS, they apply for a ration card in a state. So, for a state like
Okay.
Jharkhand, there are 8 lakh pending ration card applications. So now so the center gives the state a quota of grains. So
Okay.
for example, if a state has, let's say just for example, 100 beneficiaries, the center will transfer from the Food Corporation of India grains which will feed 100 families. But if that population has grown, like to say 150, and from out of 50, even if 30 families are those who would be eligible to receive that grain from the center based
Right.
on the National Food Security Act, the center won't transfer the grain from them for them. So the state can't give them ration cards because it would be unable to give them the additional grain because the center won't transfer the additional grain to the state. So that's why this becomes a problem. That is why there is this huge problem of pending ration card applications, particularly in poorer states of Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, parts of Uttar Pradesh. So
Right.
that is, yeah,
So, I mean, even before then announcing a scheme based on PDS, the government should have taken note of this because, I mean, it's a pandemic situation, and we know that there's so many pending ration card applications. So, 5 kg additional rice and wheat would not suffice.
correct. That is what a lot of people have been saying. In fact, Amartya Sen, Raghuram Rajan, and Abhijit Banerjee wrote in the Indian Express, I think a month ago, it's been a month now, that ration should be made available to anybody who needs it.
Right.
Uh, and you should not be looking for who has a ration card and who doesn't have a ration card. And there is another problem with this that the ration card for most people or all people is in their home districts. So a lot of these migrant workers who suddenly we are discovering exist,
Right.
they are by definition outside their home district. So even if they have ration cards in their home districts, their name would appear on a ration card. They will not get access to grain because they are not in their home district, and their ration card won't give them grain. Let's say in a Delhi or a Mumbai if they are working there. So all these people are also left out, and the government has so far not announced anything. It's been left to the states. Some states have said that they will give grain to even the migrant workers, those without ration cards. But it's a very patchy system. It's not really a system anyway. It's not working very well, and the states have Even and the states who are even doing this, who are giving grain to those who don't have ration cards, have to purchase this grain from the center at the market price, which is around 21 rupees per kilogram for rice.
So, based on your reporting so far, you've have we found out that people who don't have ration cards are completely not getting any food? The starvation has increased.
Yeah, hunger has certainly increased. So we also have reports of starvation deaths happening in places like Jharkhand, Bihar, Eastern UP. Those have been happening. Still, most people are saying that they continue to be underreported. Uh, but a lot of accounts of people who are reducing their food intake just because they don't have enough. So eating one meal a day, for example, that is what a lot of people have been doing. Particularly the migrant workers who are stuck in cities who can't go back home,
Right.
and they don't have any money. They don't have any way to access food grain. They only have to rely on the largesse and the benevolence of the local government or local NGOs. So I get a lot of calls from these migrant workers every week almost that they are running out of grain. So some police, some cop would provide them some atta and some rice for like 7 days, but these are a lot of people. Then again they will run out of it, and again somebody else will provide it. But that's not really a system which is working. They don't have any money. They don't. There is no way that the state can provide them. That the state has devised to provide them with grain. So yes, a lot of people have been going hungry for this, and this problem is only going to increase if it's not fixed right now.
Right. And so the food canteens were set up in the national capital. We saw reports, and even in some states, for example, Tamil Nadu also. So, uh, again, is this not going to help people who are migrant workers who are stuck in cities? How does this work?
Yeah, the community kitchens, the food kitchens have been set up. Most of these, according to the center's submission to the Supreme Court, a majority of these have been set up by NGOs, and a majority of these have been set up in one state of Kerala. So these are not there all over the place. During my reporting around in Western Uttar Pradesh, I have not come across even a single community kitchen. I've heard about them. Maybe I have missed them, but I haven't seen them. So I mean, if people walking on the roads, I've seen people walking on the roads, and if there were community kitchens which were meant to feed them, they would have been there, but they were not. So
Right.
these are just. It's not enough. It's certainly not enough. It can't be left to NGOs. The NGOs do not have the capacity to deal with a problem of this magnitude. This has to be dealt with by the government, state governments, and the center, which has to provide the resources for the states to be able to do this.
Right.
And so far that simply has not happened. And this is a very large number of people who need support right now. So it's at least 108 million based on the calculation of increase in population.
Right.
Then you're looking at exclusions outside the PDS just by virtue of inefficiencies in the system.
Mm.
Then a lot of people have been pushed into poverty because of the lockdown.
Right.
So people who were earning their daily living before the lockdown are now
Right.
not able to earn. So they would also not be able to feed themselves.
Right.
So and we don't have any estimates of what that number is, but unemployment rate has gone up from 7% to 25% now. So
Mm.
it's a huge number, and most of these people would be in the informal sector,
Right.
those who were on the margins of poverty. So we are looking at a massive problem. More than 1 billion people who face food insecurity, perhaps, and the PDS system only covers 800 million. And like we've seen in April, even from these 800 million, 200 million were left out and were not provided the additional grain that was promised.
Yes. Another thing, Kabir. So how does one solve this? I mean, obviously, it's a Herculean task in the face of the government, the central government, and the state, considering the states are also running short on funds. But there's a story that you've reported that the center could universalize PDS. If you could explain the math behind it.
Yeah, so this has been a suggestion which has been put forth by a lot of people, including, like I mentioned, Amartya Sen, Abhijit Banerjee, Raghuram Rajan. Sonia Gandhi has said this. John Drez has suggested this. Just universalize PDS, give the grain to anybody who's willing to stand in line to get that grain.
Okay.
So, I mean, the exclusion here is that you and I, in the heat of May and June, are not going to stand in the queue
Mm.
for 5 kilos of atta, 5 kilos of rice. Only the people who really need it will be willing to do it.
Mm.
So, I mean, the regular concern of that people who don't need it will stand in line and take advantage. I think that fear should be suspended by the
Okay.
bureaucrats. That is the fear they always have. So,
Mm.
universalizing PDS, many methods have been suggested. One is that you give ration based on the Aadhaar card. And since the government claims that more than 98% of Indians have Aadhaar cards, so this is a system which should cover practically everyone. And so just give the ration to whoever comes with the Aadhaar, just on the basis of the Aadhaar card. That is something that can easily be done. The problem here, which the government is facing and is not addressing, is that there is enough grain. As of March, we had 77 million tons of grain, which is more than three times the buffer stock requirement.
Okay.
So I did a calculation that, assuming that 1.1 billion people are provided this grain, this is most likely an overestimate, but let's even assume that if 1.1 million people are provided 10 kilograms of grain every month for
Mm.
the next 6 months, we would need 66 million tons of grain.
Okay.
And we have 77. We are procuring around between 35 and 40 million tons during the current Rabi season.
Mm.
So we have enough grain to do this at least for 6 months. John Drez has suggested that we do this for a whole year, and there is no problem. We have
Right.
enough grain. So, I mean, I don't see any problem in doing this. The government should have done this right in the beginning.
Right.
But so far, I mean, we don't have any signal of any sort. In fact, we have the opposite signal. Like, the government is saying that excess rice will be converted to ethanol to make hand sanitizer.
Right.
So that's the way the government is thinking, which is quite surprising.
So this definitely is one step towards solving hunger, at least in the time of till this pandemic is here.
Right. That is something that the government can easily do.
Right.
You don't need to develop a new system for it.
Mm.
The system is already in place. You just need to expand the ambit of the PDS. You just need to make sure that there is no exclusion from the PDS. There have also been reported even ration card holder, there is this biometric authentication failure all the time. There are
Right.
transaction failures, internet connection failure. So those problems, they should just get rid of all those issues and just give grain to whoever is willing to stand in line.
Right.
Ritika Khera suggested that if the government feels that one person will get grain more than once a month, so you can use indelible ink on their, like the voting ink,
Right.
so that they are not able to not able to access grain more than once a month. So there are many ways which this can be done, but so far the government has not shown the inclination to be even thinking about in this direction.
And so you also mentioned that 200 million people have still not received the grain. So we are almost nearing, I mean, next month is June and the 3 month period will end next month. So uh, are these 200 million people going to get grain in the next month, or they just won't get it?
Oh, well, you don't know, but I mean, they were supposed to get that is for the month of April. So Sitharaman had announced that for April, May, and June, the additional 5 kilograms of grain will be provided for these 800 million people. But they're due in the month of April, and April is already over. 200 million people did not get what Sitharaman had promised them in April. While that April is already over, so I mean, the impact of that, there are health consequences of undernourishment,
Right.
particularly. So those consequences now will have to be dealt with those people by those people who didn't get the grain. And these are, I mean, some states have also done well. Like for example, surprisingly, Uttar Pradesh has uh, performed excellently in this and has provided grain to 96% of these card holders.
Okay.
But states like Delhi and Punjab, for example, is very surprising that only 1% of these people have been provided grain in April.
Okay.
West Bengal is another poor performer. Among large states, Madhya Pradesh as well and Odisha haven't performed well. So, so most bulk of these 200 million people are in these states.
Okay. Okay. But in another interview, I mean, with The Wire's Mitali Mukherjee only, the Punjab Chief Minister, however, said that, I mean, Punjab has a lot of surplus grain. So why would it be that the state has not provided grains to people under PDS?
I don't know. I really don't have an answer. It's very surprising. Uh, Punjab, to begin with, is a richer state. It doesn't have it doesn't have high population density. So I mean, I don't know what the thinking is. I haven't really followed up on why Punjab hasn't provided it. But one thing is that Punjab is a relatively smaller state, richer state. So not as many people, let's say in Jharkhand, need the additional grain uh, to begin with. But even then, just providing it to 1% of the population has been it's quite remarkable that this is the way the Punjab has performed, despite, as you said, being the food bowl of India.
Right. So providing ration then doesn't necessarily mean mean providing nutrition. Uh, what do we know on that front? I mean, malnutrition is already an issue in the country, but providing grains doesn't necessarily mean you're, I mean, assuring nutrition, right?
Yeah, for a nutritious diet, you need a lot of things. So, I mean, the government did attempt to solve this problem as well in the beginning when Nirmala Sitharaman announced this package. So she also said that 1 kilogram of pulses per household per month will also be given along with the grain. So pulses previously pulses were not a part of the PDS nationally. They were a part of it in only some evolved states like Andhra Pradesh, but not really structurally a part of the PDS. So this was for the first time that pulses were introduced
Okay.
as PDS. Well, I mean, the quantity was very little. If for a family of four, it translates into what 250 gram of pulses per month per person, which is very low, but it was a good start. But that those pulses haven't reached the people. Uh, Only 22% of ration card holders have received the pulses for the month of April. So that also hasn't happened. So the diverse, I mean, you need a nutritious diet. So you need different. You need protein, which is an essential part of the diet.
Right.
But pulses are since a large proportion of India is vegetarian, so pulses have a unique place in the Indian diet. The government did try to provide them, but I mean, hasn't worked. I mean, because there wasn't enough follow up and the system wasn't in place, and perhaps it wasn't thought through from the beginning. But
Right.
then it should have been something else which the government should have thought of. Like some states, for example, like Kerala has been sending eggs to in the under the midday meal program,
Okay.
sending eggs to the homes of children. Even Karnataka is doing that. So again, eggs are a source of protein.
Right.
So that is something that the state governments can think of. This is something which perhaps for the state governments to do on their own.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. This something about this needs to be addressed.
Like, for example, pregnant women have iron deficiencies, but we don't know if, I mean, iron supplements in terms of food are being given to women who need it.
Correct. Yeah, I mean that is another problem of the prenatal care which women need.
Right.
And I mean, not just that, a lot of other things have been suspended. There have been reports of delivery deaths, for example, because women haven't been able to reach the hospital, or the hospital has refused to admit them because of the COVID threat.
Right.
So yeah, these are problems which we're facing, and I think Mint had a piece on this, that vaccines have been suspended. So a lot of children in these 2 months did not get the vaccines that they needed, and this could have repercussions years down the line.
Right.
They missed those vaccines. So yeah, these are multiple problems which will come to light, or we haven't seen all of them right now. We don't know all these problems, but there will be lots of them which we will see for years to come because of this crisis.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Kabir, and for explaining to us these nuances of food security in the country.
Thank you, Pawan. Pleasure talking to you.